Today, I'm going to share with you a simple framework that is the fastest way to grow your agency to $1 million and beyond. I'm actually going to share with you a case study or an example of a business that actually went from zero to $27 million annual revenue in just 20 months using this same framework. So it's the fastest way to get to $1 million, but it's also the fastest way to get beyond that, okay? Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Joel Norton. I am an ex-agency CEO. I used to run an 8-figure MarTech agency, and today I help ambitious agency owners who are looking to build a more profitable and sustainable business, one that grows and runs without them, one where you win better quality clients, you can increase profit and free your time. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about this simple model or framework that is the fastest way to simplify things and to grow. Now I'm going to start by just sharing an example of an agency I worked with a couple of years ago and just where they were at when I first started working with them. So I'll just change screens here. Okay. Now I call this the anti-case study, all right? So it's what not to do. Now, let's just talk firstly around the types of businesses that they were working with, the types of clients that they had. So in the first instance, they were working with a bunch of B2C, so business to consumer clients. So they had real estate, construction, tech, e-commerce, service firms, finance, health, charity, and also hospitality. So just in the B2C category, they were working with 9 different industry verticals. Now, let's just pause there. Imagine the types of work that you do for those types of businesses is very different. What a real estate agency needs is very different to what a construction firm needs, which is very different to what an e-commerce business needs, which is very different to what a charity needs or hospitality needs. So you can see there's complexity in the types of clients or the blend and mix of clients that they had. The next thing was they also had, on top of B2C, they also had some B2B clients. So within that, they had finance, health, services, and tech. So they had 4 industry verticals that they work with in B2B. Now so across those 2, they've got 13 different industry verticals. The reason why they had so many was that a lot of their business was coming from referral. And so they weren't actively targeting a specific type of business, okay? So they're getting these leads in, of course, they were saying, yes, we can help you. Now, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Now, to add further complexity to this, let's have a look at the services they were offering, okay? Now, the services, they were doing digital strategy, they were doing paid search, they were also doing paid social as well, they were doing SEO, they had content, they were doing social media, they also did website development, and they also did emails. So they had 8 different types of services they were offering. Now the kicker is, this is not a $10 million business. It's not even a $5 million business. This agency was at around $400,000, okay? Now, can you see a business like this doing $400,000, the complexity in here? And it was stuck and stalled at that number because of the complexity in the business, both in terms of the types, the range of clients that they had across B2C and B2B, and also in terms of the various different services. Now there was a handful of people in the business, but I could see that a lot of them were sort of sitting around twiddling their thumbs most of the day because they weren't busy, because the owner or the founder was the bottleneck. Everything had to come back to them in terms of doing the strategy, but also being able to make decisions to be able to move forward on certain stuff. And so he was like just tearing his hair out and working a lot of hours, and the team was sitting around not doing very much, okay? Which is not a very healthy or sustainable type of business. Now, this is a little bit more extreme, but it is common in terms of, let's just simplify it a bit, but let's just say, so for a lot of businesses or agencies that I talk with, they do have a blend of, it might not be 13, but they've certainly got quite a few types of clients that they're working with. And whilst they might not have 8 services, they'll generally have at least 3 or 4. So even in that scenario, there is, and for a business that's doing less than $1 million, that's still a lot of complexity, okay? And so this is the first thing I want to, the overarching theme for this is complex fails, simple scales. Complex fails, simple scales. The fact is that when we look at that type of business, both in terms of the types of clients they're working with, but also the services that they're offering, there's a lot of complexity in there. And as a result, the agency owner was the bottleneck. Everything had to come back to them to make decisions and to provide direction for the team. Now, the reality is, as the business grows and grows in terms of revenue, but also the number of employees, as the business grows, you're going to have complexity anyway. Because obviously running a business with 5 people is very different to running a business with 10 people, which is very different to running a business with 20 people. So you're going to have extra layers of complexity as the business grows and you've got more people in the business, okay? And so we want to try and reduce as much of the complexity anyway, because you're going to have complexity as it grows. So by having more focus around who we work with and the type of work that we do, it's going to help. Now, what happens when we don't do that? I'm going to share with you something I call the complexity trap. So on the horizontal axis, let's look at, we've got complex on the left, and on the right, we've got simple, okay? And on the vertical axis, we've got trapped, and at the top, we've got the owner feeling like freedom, okay? Now, in the bottom quadrant down here, where there's things are complex, like in those examples that I shared, where there's a lot of different types of customers they're working with and or they're offering lots of different services. And in that scenario that I painted, where the owner was the bottleneck and they felt trapped, what we end up with is chaos. It's just not a nice place to be. You're working all hours of the day and weekends and making not a lot of money and just feeling like I can't get ahead. I can never feel like I can get ahead, all right? If we keep going across to the right, let's just say that we do simplify things. So we're able to simplify things, but for different reasons, we still feel trapped in the business. We struggle with doing delegation and other stuff, so we feel trapped. So when that happens, we end up with, basically, we've just got low leverage. And when we've got low leverage, basically all we've done is we've created ourselves a job. Okay, we're not a business owner. We've got a job, all right? We've simplified things, but we still feel trapped. We're just doing the same stuff day after day after day. That's a job, all right? Not particularly fulfilling. Now, let's go top left. When we go top left and we've still got a complex business, but we're able to break through and break through some of that chaos. To have a team and therefore be able to delegate some things. So we've got a bit of a sense of freedom, but there's still complexity in the business. When that happens, often really the business feels bloated. And I don't know about you, but feeling bloated is kind of not really nice. It's just like you don't feel great. And usually when it's bloated, we've got, there's too many things, and generally it means lower profit or less profit. Okay? Harder to grow, harder to move forward, not making as much money. So it's still not a great place to be. Where we want to get to is obviously the top right, where we've got a greater sense, we've simplified the business and we've got a greater sense of freedom. And when we get up there, that's when things become scalable. All right. Now I'm going to put a big caveat on this. Scalable, it doesn't necessarily mean that, not every agency owner or business owner wants to get to 10 million, 20 million plus, okay? So when I say scalable, it doesn't necessarily mean big. Big is not always better. It's whatever is right for you. Scalable just means that the business can run and grow without me being in it. It runs and grows independent of the owner being in there. Okay, it's optional, all right? That's what we want to get to. So we want a business that's scalable, it runs and grows without me. All right, so how do we do that? All right, I'm going to share with you, let's go back to the iPad, this framework called the 5 Ones framework. And it originated from a guy called Clay Collins, who is the founder of Lead Pages, which is a software. And he talked about it as the 5 Ones was the fastest way for a software business to get to $1 million. Now, the same framework doesn't have to be software. The same framework works for any business. I'm going to talk about it in the context of agencies. So whether you're a digital marketing agency, a marketing agency, it also works for other businesses. And I'm going to share a story of somebody, as I said at the start, where they grew a business from 0 to $27 million in only 20 months, okay? But let's go through the framework first. So the first, at the top, we've got target market. Okay, so those examples that I shared with you, in that example, there was 13 different industry verticals, okay? That's a lot, as we sort of talk through, because there's different strategies, different outcomes that are required for those different target market. That's a lot of complexity just straight out of the gate. The next one is around our products and services. So let's just say services or solutions, okay? Now, in that example I shared with you, there were 8. But in most agencies, it could be anywhere from sort of 3 to 8. But immediately between the target market and the services, as you can see, there's a lot of complexity there, all right? Now, why does that happen? Let's just talk about that briefly. Usually the key reasons why we've got lots of services, I'm just talking specifically around products and services now, why do we end up offering too many? The first reason is usually because the founders come from another agency, a bigger agency, and that bigger agency might have 8 different services, but generally they're probably at $5 million plus, or they're seeing the big agencies, which are $10 million plus, and again, they're seeing they've got this breadth of services. So they feel like they need to offer all of those services in order to compete with the big boys, okay? The problem is you're trying to replicate what they're doing and they're 15 steps ahead, okay? That's the first reason it happens. The second reason it happens is also because clients say, we just say yes too often, okay? And I've definitely been there where the client says, hey, I love what you're doing in this area. Could you help us with this other thing? And sometimes it's like, and of course we just go, yes, because we're afraid that if we don't do it, another agency is going to get in there, and then there's some scarcity around potentially losing that client. But also we want to just grow revenue. So the focus is on growing revenue. Sometimes we might have done it before, and so we kind of know our way around it. I've also been in a situation where we wanted to do something, but we hadn't done it yet. So all of a sudden we say yes, we land it, and then we're scrambling around trying to actually work out how to do it. Okay, so I've been there. We grew that client, that was great. But when we do that, what happens is growth overall slows. When we're doing something that we're not as familiar with, or we don't have all of the resources for, growth slows because there's complexity. So it sucks the agency or the agency owner or the founder back into the business, and they're stuck in delivery and trying to work things out, okay? So anytime that there is complexity, it pulls the agency owner and the founder back into the business because they've got to sort things out, and then growth slows. And so that's the other big way that we end up adding services, because clients say, hey, love that. Can you do this? And we go, sure, yes, let's do it. Okay. The next thing is then around sales, our sales methodology. Now, for most agencies, they've generally got one sales approach, so that is okay. I'm not too worried about that. The next one is around, when Clay talked about traffic. But let's just talk about, all intents and purposes, it's leads. Now, excluding the fact that some people rely too heavily on referrals early days, so I'm not going to talk about that. But when they're looking to expand, they'll then try and look at and say, okay, well, let's do Google ads, and let's do social, and let's do SEO. And so they're looking at doing 2 or 3 things straight away. But when they're doing 2 or 3 things at once, they all generally pretty average. Okay. And the last thing is time. And this is where we end up doing 2 or 3 things, because they'll say, right, let's do Google Ads. And they do that for example, for 3 or 4 months. And then after that, they go, well, that's not working. Let's do something else. And so they'll do something else for 3 or 4 months, like they might do LinkedIn. And they go, oh, well, that's not working. Let's do something else. Let's do cold email. And they do that for 3 or 4 months. And then that doesn't work. And so over the course of the year, they probably change what they're doing 3 to 4 times. Now, can you see on the left-hand side, look at the complexity that we've got in all of that. We've got 13 different types of target audience. We've got 3 to 8 different services we're doing. We're doing different sort of traffic or lead generation things, which we don't, and we change our mind every 3 to 4 months. And so there's complexity, all right? So the 5 ones is basically doing one thing in each of those camps. So we do one target market. We offer one service or solution. We have one sales methodology. We do one traffic source, and we do it all for 1 year. Okay, that's the fastest way to get to $1 million. Now, once you've cracked $1 million, then, and the idea about doing that is that certainly with this stuff, we're trying to do it so that we're becoming masters. We want to be master at it. Okay? Because anything we do for the first time, it's going to take a while to go, we're starting something new. We've got to try and work out what's the right way to do it. We want to optimize and optimize and optimize until we get exceptional at it, until we become masters at it. Then when we've become a master, then usually after we've been doing it for a year and we've hit the numbers we need to hit, okay, now let's add in some other sources. At that time, we may add, I would generally say, add in some additional traffic sources so we're getting more leads, but stick with one target market and one service and solution. So that's the fastest way to get to $1 million. Now, 2 quick examples. One example is a digital marketing agency that their niche or their specialization was actually plumbers. So instead of being all things to everybody and doing digital marketing for anyone, they narrowed it down to tradies, so builders, plumbers, electricians, that sort of stuff. And then they ended up going narrower, and they went straight down to plumbers. Okay, so with by focusing on plumbers, and then they offered 3 services. They basically did paid search, they did SEO, and they did website. Okay, so those 3 things together, ultimately that was all around providing leads. The overall solution was around providing leads for plumbers, and they did it through those 3 services. The important thing is that as they broke through $1 million and beyond, they're one of the fastest growing agencies. They just kept the same audience. They've kept the same audience and the same offer. Because guess what happens when you do that? You get better and better and better. And so their results became even better and better. That made marketing a lot easier. It made sales a lot easier. And so they stuck with the one target audience, and they just kept with those 3 services and just kept doing it and just kept growing. Because as I said, complexity will happen with the business as it grows and the team grows. So you want to try and keep everything else as simple as possible. Now, the other example that I was going to share with you, which is not an agency, it kind of started life as an agency, but it morphed beyond that, which is actually, some people may be familiar with Alex and Layla Hormozi. When they originally launched GymLaunch. Now, if you don't know, Alex and Layla now have a business called acquisition.com. They're part owners in School, which is a online e-learning platform. And so their portfolio of businesses is worth $300 million plus. Now, it started with GymLaunch. And by their own admission, the first with Alex, he started as a gym owner. And then he had a few iterations of what that looked like. And I think his first 5 businesses or 6 businesses, to his, using his words, failed. He lost money and it was a failure. So he had a few failed attempts. But once he worked out what the right model was and he cracked it, they went from 0 to $27 million in 20 months. Okay. So effectively what they were doing was their one audience was gym owners. They stuck with that one audience and they just did gym owners. As far as the services, it was a combination of lead generation. So they were doing social ads, but they bolted on sales. So they did the sales. So ultimately their offer, and he's written a book called $100 Million Offers. His offer was not just around generating leads, it was actually generating, so it was gym owners. He could go from 0 to a full gym in 6 weeks, and they only paid for the members that they got. Okay, so it was a very, very, very compelling offer. But the important thing is one audience, effectively one service, which was the two things together, the lead gen and sales. And he did that for a period of time. And because he worked out the model and he did it for a year, once he cracked it, then he went from 0 to 20 million, okay, in record time. So it absolutely is possible. And so this last thing, so it's the fastest way, in this example using Alex and Layla, it's the fastest way to 30 million. Is it the only way to get to 30 million? No. There are lots of agencies out there that are $5 million and $10 million plus, and they're working with lots of different audiences, and they're offering lots of different services. Absolutely, there are. But it probably took them a long time to get there. It probably took them 5 years to get there, or 10 years to get there. So using the 5-1s framework is definitely the fastest way to get to $1 million. But if you stick with it, I guarantee it's the fastest way to get beyond that, okay? Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you're interested in learning more around how to grow your agency, just comment below with the word 5-1s, and let's have a chat. But otherwise, hope that helps, and I'll speak to you soon. Here's to your next win. Cheers.